Imagine working, running, dancing, or farming all day, without a bra, without elastic, without modern fabric. Yet women did exactly that for thousands of years. So what actually kept everything in place? The answer isn't one invention. It's dozens of clever solutions, created independently by different civilizations, each one shaped by their own climate, clothing, and daily life. The modern bra, the kind sitting in your drawer right now, is surprisingly young in the grand scope of history. But breast support itself is ancient. Long before elastic, before factories, before a single fashion brand existed, women around the world were already solving this exact same problem, and remarkably, they solved it in very different ways. Some relied on wrapped cloth. Others built the support directly into their everyday clothing. And one civilization, as we'll see, may have been doing something surprisingly close to a modern solution, thousands of years earlier than anyone expected. To find the first clues, archaeologists have to travel back more than 3,500 years, to a civilization whose clothing still surprises historians today. The earliest evidence takes us back to Bronze Age Crete, home of the Minoan civilization. Among the most striking artifacts to survive from this culture are figurines known as the snake goddesses, women depicted wearing fitted, structured bodices that lift and frame the chest with unmistakable intention. This isn't loose draped fabric. It's tailored, shaped clothing, engineered around the body rather than simply hanging from it. It's worth being precise here. Historians interpret these bodices as an early form of breast support based on how deliberately they're shaped in the surviving art and artifacts, but we're working from figurines and fragments, not a fully preserved garment, so this remains an archaeological interpretation rather than a confirmed, documented technique. Still, the surviving artwork suggests Minoan artisans deliberately designed these garments with structure and support in mind, although exactly how they were worn remains uncertain. But these garments looked nothing like what came next. Across the Aegean Sea, the Greeks chose a far simpler solution. A wrapped band of cloth called a strophion, sometimes referred to as an apodesmos. Rather than a shaped, structured piece, this was a long strip of fabric wound around the chest, offering support through simple, direct wrapping rather than tailoring. Evidence for this comes from two different directions: Greek vase paintings depicting women wearing the band, and literary references describing its use, giving historians a reasonably clear picture of how common and how functional this simple technique actually was. Rome inherited the idea, but adapted it. Rome's version of this wrapped band shows up vividly in one of the most famous surviving mosaics from the ancient world, the so-called Bikini Girls mosaic, found in a Roman villa in Sicily, depicting women engaged in athletic activity while wearing chest-supporting bands. Roman writers also describe garments known as the strophium and mammillare, used to bind or support the chest, essentially a Roman approach to what we might now recognize as sports-specific support. This wasn't just about modesty, it was function, built specifically for movement, for exercise, for activity that a loose garment simply couldn't accommodate. But not every civilization relied on separate garments at all. Elsewhere, support came from clothing itself. In many cultures across history, breast support wasn't a distinct item you put on. It was built directly into the clothing itself. Fitted tunics, cinched belts, tailored bodices, garments constructed and adjusted specifically to hold their shape against the body. Instead of adding a separate supportive layer, tailoring itself did the work, shaping the fabric so precisely that no additional undergarment was needed. It's a completely different philosophy from the wrapped band or structured bodice, support through the cut of the clothing rather than through a dedicated piece worn underneath it. Then, centuries later, archaeologists uncovered something no one expected. At Langberg Castle in Austria, researchers uncovered a hoard of textile fragments dating back centuries, and among them were linen garments that resembled certain features of a modern bra, complete with distinct cups and supportive structure. This find genuinely surprised historians. The long-standing assumption had been that structured, cup-based breast support simply didn't exist in medieval Europe, that women relied entirely on shaping through outer garments during this period. The Langberg discovery challenged that assumption, suggesting that some medieval women may have worn garments functionally similar to a modern bra hundreds of years earlier than historians once believed. It's an extraordinary find, and one that continues to reshape how historians think about this entire timeline. But one famous ancient civilization seems to have done something completely different. In ancient Egypt, the evidence for a dedicated, separate breast support garment is notably thin. Instead, Egyptian clothing relied heavily on lightweight linen, fitted closely to the body, well suited to an intensely hot climate where heavier, layered garments simply weren't practical. Rather than adding a distinct supportive layer, the fitted cut of Egyptian dresses appears to have served that role on its own, much like the tailored clothing approach seen elsewhere. Whether this reflects a genuine absence of separate support garments, or simply a gap in what has survived archaeologically after thousands of years, historians can't say with certainty. What the evidence does show clearly is that Egypt's solution, whatever it fully looked like, was shaped directly by its climate and its clothing traditions. So if civilization after civilization solved the same basic problem in such different ways, what does that actually tell us? There was never one single ancient bra, no shared blueprint passed down and refined generation after generation. Instead, each civilization adapted breast support to its own climate, its own clothing traditions, its own culture, and the specific demands of daily work and movement. Minoan Crete built structure directly into a bodice. Greece wrapped a simple band. Rome adapted that band for athletic activity. Elsewhere, tailoring alone did the job. And in one Austrian castle, a discovery emerged that looked startlingly close to something modern, centuries before anyone expected it to exist. The modern bra represents the latest stage in a much longer history of breast support. For thousands of years, women didn't wait for modern fashion to solve everyday problems. Using woven cloth, carefully tailored clothing, and practical design, they found solutions that worked for their own lives. The bra hanging in your closet today isn't the beginning of this story, it's simply the newest chapter in a history of ingenuity that stretches back thousands of years. Long before elastic, factories, or fashion brands, women were already solving the same everyday challenge in remarkably creative ways.